Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of your favorite developer show, the CodeCast by STL Tech Talk, where we're going to bring you the content you want and need instructional, informative, unique, and insightful commentary on programming and technology. My name is JJ, and I'm joined tonight by my very good friend and fellow co host, apparently. I could not be happier that Alejandro Ramirez is going to be. My partner in crime, if you will. So, Alejandro, without further ado, say hello to everybody for the show.
Hello, everybody. It's great to be here. I'm just too excited to come up with words to say thanks to you guys. It's a really exciting venture to join this more regularly, and we have a really interesting discussion today. I think you guys are going to enjoy it.
We
Um,
do.
I hope
Well,
you like it.
but they will, Alejandro. And if they don't, that's just too bad.
Then you can
So,
blame JJ.
you can blame me, and that is perfectly fine. Just to let you all know, I cry myself to sleep anyway. So before we get started, we want to go ahead and obviously thank the sponsors of the show, Inertia Software, creating cutting-edge, highly scalable Microsoft technological solutions to the energy industry. Visit inertia-software.com for more information, or hit us up on the social media and let us know how we could possibly get you in contact with them. You can find us on Twitter, #CodeCast, or at CodeCastSTL, and you can always email us at contact@stltechtalk.com. Also, we want to thank our biggest and bestest friends of the whole world, Tech Systems. So you want to advance your IT career, but you don't want to submit your resume to hundreds of online job boards in the hopes of finding your next job? Your solution is simple. Tech Systems is the leading IT staffing provider in the U.S. and is ready to be your career partner. Their goal, Tech Systems' goal, is to help you achieve your personal and professional goals. Contact a local recruiter today at techsystems.com/St. Louis. Now, that's St. Louis with STLOUIS. So that's TEK systems.com/STLOUIS. So without further ado, tonight's subject is going to be Azure in the cloud. It's not actually going to be my backdrop, which it looks like I'm in a closet, so I'm going to be coming out of the closet tonight on the show, as Alejandro said before the show. We're going to be talking a lot about not just Azure, but we're going to be talking about cloud computing. I say Azure because a lot of people are using that, but I don't want to discount, Amazon's AWS. We were just talking about a whole bunch of different cloud solutions, so I'm excited to tell you a little bit about. First, we're going to talk about the definition. We're going to talk about the evolution. Then we're going to talk about individuals versus companies that use the cloud, and then we'll talk about developers. So Alejandro did a really good job in talking to me rather about cloud computing before the show started. So let's just keep it going. Go ahead and Alejandro, tell our listeners, what is the definition in your mind? Because, like you said, it's an overused term in your mind of the cloud.
Yeah, so to kind of set things straight, I think cloud is being used lately as a buzzword to sell a lot of solutions. But before we get into that part, which will come later, uh, before all of this started, everybody can go and pick their favorite search engine and search for cloud, and you will find a series of diagrams where the internet was referred to as the cloud.
Mm-hmm.
So when you were trying to create a connection of audio and data back in those days where we were getting into voice over IP, you could see diagrams, and the common term to refer to those services provided that were not in-house was the cloud or over the internet. One clarification is just because it's cloud, it doesn't mean it's only wireless. It basically means that it's something that you don't have physically in your location. So think about Microsoft Word. There's two versions of Word. There is Word Online from Office Online, and there is also you don't get a DVD anymore, but you can download and install it on your computer, and that runs on your machine. So that's a really good example of something that is local versus something that is cloud hosted or cloud based. And there are multiple implications, of course, of how we've evolved from simple solutions in the cloud to rather more complicated or more, I guess, robust will be a better word, solutions in the cloud. And speaking of that evolution, so if you think about where we started, we had personal computers, and when the network connections came to be, well, you needed access to resources that you could obviously not procure within your own environment. So maybe the servers were local, and you just had to connect to a network uh, by supplying a password and a login that were specific to that network. But then that network connected to other locations of your company or connected to other services that were procured by a different service provider. Then that's when you started to really get into tapping a bit into some of that cloud-based services. I think another way to see or think about this evolution is also storage. I think storage is a very simple way to think about um, cloud computing. So you can save things to a hard drive that is in your computer, or you can save up to a shared drive somewhere. And if some of you may think of your days in college that, well, I had a network drive. That was kind of like that, but not quite. I think cloud has really evolved into being something that you're within your infrastructure. So if you're in a college, if the college had that infrastructure, technically wasn't cloud, although you could access it from your dorm or whatever. But it's really more of a you as a company or as an individual taking the responsibility and ownership of maintaining and servicing and setting up everything that needs to be done to have that resource available. So if you're a student, obviously the school administrators and the IT department takes care of that, but it's still part of the school. But if you're in an organization that uses, let's say, a library of files or books online through Safari or whatnot, then you're using a cloud service which will serve you a set of PDFs that you can browse online or whatnot. And
Right.
another simple example, I think I should have started with that one, is websites. You could arguably host a website on your laptop if you want to, or your Surface Pro, or whatever you're using. But normally, you will go to a host that will sell you a domain, or if you don't want a domain, you can host it for free on one of the numerous services. So you don't have to incur into having to set up the server and picking which OS and then doing updates. So that service is provided to you, and it's on a cloud-based basis per se. And so you just basically say, I want to pick, I don't know, a WordPress blog, or I want to have a Joomla, or a whatever else you pick the flavor to be. And so I think websites are probably the easiest one. And as you can think about it, hey, I'm accessing this on my laptop, yeah, but you see a browser that is an interface that goes to the server that is hosting something in that cloud and bringing that down for you, which is a web search results or a web page with images, and those images are stored in the cloud, brought down locally, so you can have faster access over time with caching. But so that's kind of my view, and a quick summary of kind of the setting context around thinking about cloud. So it's not just those buzzword services that you hear about. You're probably using a lot of cloud-based services that you didn't just happen to call them that, right?
Right. So I got a couple of questions for you. When people are trying to kind of approach the idea of moving like a hybrid solution, you hear that a lot. Is that also in your mind another overused term, the hybrid solution? I mean, do you think that's the way to go, or what?
So if I understand your question correctly, I can think of two categorizations that are kind of used widely in the industry. There is the public cloud versus the private cloud, and then there is hybrid components of that where some pieces can be private, some pieces are public. And you're asking, is there a I don't know, what are the advantages or what are the differences between those?
Yeah, I was getting ready to have a more specific question there, but because my tech monkey, as my other fellow co-host Gus usually says, is not around tonight. It's just me. I had to send out all of our links and stuff like that to the show. Okay, so now that I have my full attention back on the matter at hand, so yes, as far as a current, if a lot of the times the question is, how do we move our database and our from a server side on-prem, right, to a cloud solution? I think
Okay.
that's a lot of the conversation that's happening right now, especially where we're at.
Yeah, well, there are numerous implications of making a decision like that, because companies will always have to observe certain regulations. Sometimes the regulations are self-imposed, and those can be because of the nature of the data. Perhaps you have a high stake on certain types of data that are very very well related to your privileged information, or your whatever. It's like this. So Coca-Cola and their Coca-Cola recipe, they probably want to keep that in a vault under the ground, right? And maybe make a photocopy of it or something like that. Maybe not electronically, but without such an extreme example, some companies will have trade secrets. They're going to have intellectual property that they probably prefer not to handle in such a manner. Now, with the evolution of security, there are numerous ways of encrypting information that has made it a lot easier for these companies to not have to carry the burden of storing all of that and securing it. Now they can leverage other people's or companies' expertise to maybe even do a better job in securing that information, with having numerous ways of granting access to unauthorized users, and even monitoring if such a thing happens, which may not be the case if you're doing it in-house, with the limitation of whatever your resources can be taught by you and or who you hire that has specific training. So I think that the question first starts with, what is the nature of your data? So if you're doing a backup of your personal files, I personally back up photos because I have numerous photos. I love to take pictures of my family and everything else. And well, if knock on wood, if the house burns or I miss my hard drive, lose my hard drive somehow, now I have a cloud backup. Now my tax returns and all of that stuff, heck no, I'm not putting that out there. Maybe I haven't found a solution that gives me the cryptic information or the encryption that I need. Maybe it's just me getting old and not trusting it.
Right.
So put that into the context of a company. They're going to go through the same decision-making process.
Right, because I mean, inevitably, if you have a let's go with this model because I think everybody can relate to it instead of something more technical. When you have data sensitive that let's just say, like you said, is your tax information, which thereby has all your relevant personal information. Okay, so when you store that stuff on, say, like a home server, for example. Now, not a lot of people do this. I'm just saying we're using this as an example.
Yeah.
But on a home server, that is still connected, right? I mean, the ability for that to be hacked is still possible. Now,
yes, absolutely.
It's very difficult to say that that's going to happen for that particular scenario. However, going with this scenario, going with this relation, there is, though, still, I would say, enough security measures that one could put in place to be almost as secure online. But this is what companies are dealing with right now, especially healthcare providers that are used to handling and keeping a lot of this stuff in-house, and they're moving this to databases and servers that are in, say, Azure, for example.
Yeah, I think it goes down to the service provider. What type of things do they offer you to make you feel more assured that your information is going to be safe? Because if you think about just backups for an organization, so there is a whole career path in disaster recovery.
Right.
Think about the worst possible thing that can happen if you're in the Midwest. It's tornadoes and maybe not so much like earthquakes, but if you're in the West Coast, then it's earthquakes, and I don't know, perhaps if you're far south enough, you can have a hurricane hit your building and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. And
Right.
so sometimes disasters can be man-made. It could be an act of terrorism that causes damage or causes you to lose the ability to access your building where your data is available. And so
Nice. Mm-hmm.
whether you decide to create your own backup copies and physically take those copies to another building that you also operate, a lot of companies do that. But for cost benefits, a lot of companies are actually opting for hiring or paying for services where you can have them take those backups from you and storing them in a vault of some sort. And in case disaster hits, you can go get those backups and enable another location like a fail-safe location, or somebody in their laptop can start using some of that data to at least keep the business going up to the point where everything else can be restored.
Okay.
Um, that's that's one example on backups. There is obviously a lot more. There is payroll. Every company at least assures you that there's going to be two things when stuff goes down. Communications are important,
Mm-hmm.
and well, people need to keep getting paid, uh, and so all those systems are usually some of the first ones to go. Now think about the stock exchange. Um, all of that information has to probably be redundantly copied all over the place, so in case something goes down, it comes to another place. And
Right.
this is kind of the simplest example. In a more complex situation, um, rather than just a simple backup, perhaps your whole server is hosted by somebody else, so you're not running the server on your facility, and there is an automatic sending or duplicating of the data that happens electronically, and
Mm-hmm.
that data is replicated to a data center that is somewhere else. Um, Another use that is not necessarily backup or security related is if you are a global company that has to give access to people in multiple countries. Well, it will suck if you are in China and you have to wait for the St. Louis in the server in St. Louis, excuse me.
Right.
It will suck if you're in China and you have to wait for that server in St. Louis to serve all of your information all the way over there, because you have all that lag, all that delay. And
Mm-hmm.
so there are solutions where you can hire a service like Azure or Amazon, and you can pay for tiers where your data will be replicated to those different regions, and then a customer of yours who's in China will have access to a server that is locally hosted. And just as a developer, if you think of all of the things or infrastructure, all of the things that you will have to do, all of the resources you'll have to train and maintain, if you had to maintain that type of infrastructure, it could be prohibitive to lots of companies. And
So,
something,
well,
yeah.
real quick, though, because I don't want. I was shooting for and you answered it. So, and I don't want to give it away too much because I think that this is going to be talked about in our next segment, which is
Mhm.
the evolution. So where it came from and where we see it going. So the reason why I brought up the on-prem or the server hybrid solution where you store some stuff locally and or you back it up to the cloud, uh,
Mhm.
using the same terminology, or for security reasons, you're physically transferring that data. So let's talk about where it's going. I think eventually every major company is going to move to an all cloud solution. And the reason why I believe that, and I could be wrong, but the reason why I believe that is because of the safeguards that are in place are going to get better. And if you look at individual packets as they're distributed across, you can see how across the network how it is getting not only just faster, but the ability to replicate that data. So, like you said, to the national locale, for example, or to a place where it would take some type of godly act
Right.
to get rid of it. So
Or ungodly.
or ungodly, exactly. So I think that is the future. But let's talk about a little bit about where it's come from and the
Mhm.
evolution of it thus far, and kind of where we may see it going.
Yeah, so I think what it came from, we talked about it at the beginning, where, first maybe was just center around storage, and then we have, of course, the World Wide Web with website hosting. And I think currently with mobile devices getting so much cheaper than ever, and people owning multiple devices, the ability not just to locate files, but to access an entire image of your computer. Like if you lose your laptop today, companies have the ability to re-image a computer that has corporate standards in a matter of minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And this is becoming very important for traveling when you are representing a business or on a business trip of whatnot. If your laptop gets stolen, or if you for some reason cannot travel with a computer, you could technically buy a computer somewhere else or get a replacement and then have access to that same data through virtual private networks or VPNs. Um, or like I said, you can access an image of your computer,
Mm-hmm.
re-image a device that you just got procured to you, and then would work like nothing happened. I think where I would like to see things going with mobile devices, as you know, right now, all of the publishing has to go through app stores, and publishers have to wait a long time. And so there's all this movement to do apps that are hybrid apps that are not necessarily native apps, but that can maybe hosted on a server, and you can access them via the web. Um, so it will be really cool to see that maybe mobile devices like cell phones, smartphones rather, and tablets start using more of those hosted apps. So you don't have to go through an app store. You just download a link, and the link just behaves like an app. And even take it further, you're not using the storage of your phone to save that big application that is complicated. So developers and publishers, instead of bundling a 30 megabyte download, they can make it a lot leaner and just give you a very fast UI that leverages a stronger backend. Arguably, you could do that with a native app too, but if you need a
Yeah, but
quick update,
this way is such more
yeah,
such a lightweight solution, right?
oh yeah.
And such a forward thing because you can update that instantaneously.
And updates like you're saying, if you find a bug in your app, you have to resubmit it to the App Store, and you're at the mercy of the App Store. In this case, something fails, you can immediately post an update and get it to the users instantaneously, and there is no lag, no wait. You have full control of your publishing, full responsibility too, and of course less of the regulations imposed by that, and even profit sharing. So that's what
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
would personally like them to go. And then I don't know, we can talk about the Internet of Things. I think that's the another layer where things are
Let's
also.
let's wait until we talk about developer stuff if that's okay with you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Let's then talk about kind of sensors. I
Hmm.
think that the evolution we need to talk about real fast in the evolution conversation um, is definitely sensors. So when we think about what was talked about on Monday, which was the Apple Watch,
Yep.
we look at how um, it's full of sensors and how full of sensors, right, our mobile devices are and things of that nature. Now, each one of these things are getting cheaper to make, such as cell phones and everything like that, devices. So watches and all sorts of other wearables. We can see a host of new productivity things. Also, from an engineering standpoint, the RFID stuff, we
Hmm.
can see tracking and products and a whole bunch of other things. So, what can we look at for having a way to kind of peer or gaze into the crystal ball of the future, so to speak, on how we can get fast and reliable data from some of these sensors?
So I think that's where cloud really plays a critical role, because in a way it's just like wearables and sensors. They're removing the complexities of everyday things.
Mm-hmm.
And so by giving you something that performs a very basic function, even though it might be complicated in the inside or whatever services it connects to, it really empowers the final user or the end user to accomplish something that it was previously not possible. Like divers, for example, they rely on a lot of very critical information to basically not die when they go into a dive, temperatures and pressures and backup tanks and all of that. And so I have a friend who was talking to me about the process that he goes through to prepare to a dive,
Mm-hmm.
and all of the data, the historical data, how his body reacts to certain depths. And so the collection of all of that information, I cannot imagine how the heck people did it in the past. I imagine they
All
had
right.
maybe some
Well,
devices of some sort that they could look
yeah.
at and then make readings and take notes, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, they
So,
so we've replaced people with these sensors and gadgets. I mean, essentially, you had a person doing that thing that this sensor or connected device is now doing, right?
but and also it was a matter of you having to be down there with the device, and you were the one reading, and oh my
Yeah,
God, I'm gonna die. And now you can have maybe somebody up in the boat
no,
reading
we
your
got
your
you.
measurements, your vital signs, and oh, let's pull this guy up because he's he's not doing well.
Yeah, so
Um,
so real time, that's important. Also, so let's go ahead and get into individual versus companies. Now,
mhm.
the reason why I kind of want to transition into this in this certain way, hopefully you can kind of respect this, or you're like, dude, this doesn't
Oh
make
yeah,
sense.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
By the way,
We're good. We're good.
is languages, right? We see for a lot of the times that there are a lot of enthusiasts in this space, right? In the connected space. Also, there's a lot of enthusiasm behind cloud computing in general. Like the idea that you said, there's been some developments in making apps in a different way than we're kind of used to from our mobile devices, and especially business-centric apps to get real-time data from a Salesforce or whatever the case may be. So
Right.
when we look at this stuff and we think about how the individual can prepare themselves to be good at creating these communications and these functions and these calls. How do we look at that for the individual, and how do we look at that from the company from maybe a language perspective? A lot of us have to develop in a particular environment, and if we are confined to that environment with just a certain subset of things, what are the differences between the two that you've found? And excuse me, and then let's talk about the individual versus companies as far as just in general cloud computing. So let's do the first thing first.
So languages in regards to like spoken languages or like programming languages?
Programming languages.
Programming languages. Well, I think that with what's going on, there has been a need to develop new languages or to revamp or even resuscitate some languages that have very specific functions. There's a very popular language, I think it's R, that is being used for statistical data and for big data, because the biggest effect of all of this interconnectedness is obviously a lot of data is being collected.
And not all of it's good data.
Not all of it is good data, and it takes a lot of machine power to manipulate this data, to filter out the bad data from the good data, all of the analysis, and of course the delivery of the right data to the right people at the right time. So I think you can see that there is a search of languages, that there's all these different paths, people who are working on machine learning, people who are working on web-based services or cloud services if you want to go that route. So there are protocols that you have to learn and all kinds of different intricacies in between. So it's not sometimes only just a language. It is also the ability to interact with hardware as well as software.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
so it's kind of like pick your flavor. What is it that you have a passion? If you love hardware, I saw a guy yesterday at an Azure developer conference that he bought this Arduino $20 thing, this circuit board.
Mm-hmm.
He put a sensor to detect room temperature. He had it plugged to a battery and a Wi-Fi antenna, and he was able to look at the temperature of our conference room throughout the day and was making adjustments to the temperature. Obviously, him physically having to go and adjust, but it's just, what did he use to do that? I don't know. He said that he's never done it before. He just went online and downloaded instructions. So languages at some point could also become not irrelevant to an extent, but it seems like we're really obfuscating those details from people to make things available to more people. And so you don't necessarily have to have a degree in computer science to go and buy an Arduino board and make it automate your house or do what this guy did. And
no, that's really important. No, I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, so I think it's just opening the door for specializations that maybe didn't exist before, or were just secluded to like scientists or people with a lot of resources, and now you can just find an open source flavor of pretty much anything. So
that's awesome. No, it's great. So let's talk about individual versus cloud computing.
Mm-hmm.
Go.
Well, in that case, I think what we wanted to kind of talk about was just different service lines or different solutions that are available, and the implications of cloud to individuals versus enterprises. So
absolutely,
I think you guys can relate to what we discuss about backups and storage for an enterprise, and what we discuss about disaster recoveries in both cases. But what you can think about also with devices becoming a lot lighter weight and with all of the connectedness. So do you want to create a new blog? You don't have to buy a big desktop or server computer for your house. You can just go online, find a service provider, tell them what you want. If it's WordPress, Joomla, or anything else, then you can start writing on it, and then next thing you know, you have your website. You can email your friends and tell them. And this is all working on those services. There is nothing in your computer. All you had is a login ID and a password. Everything is there. And they're going to take care of all of the other things for you. You don't even know that this is just kind of becoming part of the service. If your blog goes down or the database is lost, they'll probably have a backup and will restore it from there.
So that's happened to me several times. As an individual
consuming services, if you're hosting a website, a blog, if you're saving your photos on Flickr or 500px, well, this guys, when you pay a certain fee, and even some of the free ones, they still, to stay in business, they procure all of these layers of security and, I guess, business continuity to allow you to continue enjoying the service with minimum outages. So when you need it, it's there. Think about things like Dropbox and OneDrive and Google Drive. So those are perfect examples. iCloud too. You don't have to save your contacts to your cell phone anymore. If you have a smartphone, you can put them in one of those clouds. You can sync them across devices. All you have to do is just enter your credentials, and you have all your Hotmail contacts or all of your me.com or Gmail, whatever service you're using. Files, same thing. If you're using OneDrive or Google Drive or Dropbox, you can now share resources with people. For developers, those of you who are using offshore resources, it is very common to have a shared Google Drive or a Dropbox, and that's how you work. And let's say mobile apps, you can put all of your code on a shared source code repository, or if you're using something like Dropbox, then you can put all of your artwork and your specs, or use a server that lets you connect to those people. So that's kind of at the individual level. At the enterprise level, I wanted to bring up again the fact that I attended a free Cloud Dev conference, a workshop by Microsoft, specifically about Azure, but still we touch on a lot of interesting points on cloud computing. We talk about different players like Rackspace and Amazon, obviously, Google and Microsoft. So the things that are available to companies today is, again, do you want to make a choice between, do I want to incur in the cost of operating an infrastructure that allows me to, I don't know, service websites that are fast, scalable.
Mm-hmm.
Like if
Mm-hmm.
I'm American Express and I know that I'm gonna run a Black Friday special, that if you use your American Express card, I'm gonna give you triple points. Well, you know that your performance is gonna be critical during that time of year. And traditionally, what enterprises had to do was probably buy or rent more servers during that time frame, like physical machines.
Right.
I think one of the side effects of cloud computing is virtualization. A lot of virtual machines have also emerged from this
Oh
because
yeah, I would
they can be
wholeheartedly.
hosted and they can be created super fast.
Mm-hmm.
You can think of picture 10 years ago, actually not even 7 years ago, a lot of test labs for things like Microsoft Office and other big software producers. You went to their test lab and they had just machine and after machine and after machine. They have hundreds of computers with all kinds of configurations, physical machines that, well,
Mm-hmm.
they had the money, they bought the computers, and then they will have a big set of servers that have images to image each computer and, for example, test Office in Spanish and then re-image a whole bunch of other 200 computers and test Office in English and Office in Polish and in 20 other languages, right?
Right.
So now with virtual machines, you can either do that in your own facilities or have a service that can do that for you. Um, but picture the ability to just create a new machine with an image that is already pre-established and then just clone it 20 times as opposed to having
With
to put it in a physical drive.
Yeah, with the specifications of those
Yep.
individual devices. Now we can
And
see
that's
that
key.
also in
Yeah.
the mobile market. We can see that with the different kinds of, say, Android operating devices or different
Right.
versions of iOS that's running. So we can see what it's like to run against those devices.
Yeah, that's actually like an excellent example because if you think about a very segregated platform like Android, you have all kinds of possible combinations of
Mhm.
sizes and speeds and capabilities, memory and camera and no camera and one camera or two cameras or four cameras. I guess,
Right.
yeah, doesn't the Amazon phone have like four cameras for the 3D stuff? But
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah. Does
uh,
anybody? No. Go ahead.
so there are services actually that allow you to access this either emulated or sometimes physical versions of these devices
Hmm.
that you can say, I need 200 Android phones and give me a mix, or I want to be specifically the Samsungs or the, I don't know, the LGs or whatever you want. And then you can just run your test, and when you're done, you turn it off and you just pay per use.
Hmm.
So what does this translate to for both individuals and companies? As services become cheaper and faster, um, they are there is more volume to be consumed, which reduces the cost to companies to provide services to us individuals. And us individuals, when the prices go down, we tend to use more services. So at the beginning, maybe you had the 1 gigabyte storage in OneDrive because it was free and you never paid $5 for the 50 gig because you thought, oh man, it's $5. But now you get a whole terabyte for free.
Hmm.
And
Well, yeah.
if you get other services, maybe it's a lot cheaper to get a lot more space. Like if you're hosting a Blogger blog on Google Drive, you can buy certain tiers of storage. If you're hosting something with iCloud, the same thing. So the prices have come down. We have a lot more space to do things. We have a lot more services. Um,
Well, and with Microsoft's OneDrive, if when you pay per year, you get unlimited storage.
yeah, I was just showing today a PowerPoint presentation that I'm working on my cell phone. I just went to my OneDrive where I'm saving it. So solid state drives for whatever reason are still expensive. They haven't come down in price yet
Hmm.
for sizes that matter. Yeah, you can go buy a 32 gigabyte solid state drive for the
Right.
price of a Coca-Cola, but what the heck are you gonna do with 32 gigabytes, right?
Hmm.
So anyway, you need something like a 512 or a 1 terabyte is gonna cost you an arm and a leg still. But
Right.
instead, what I do lately, I might sacrifice not spending the larger SSD drive, but instead of saving everything local, I just put everything on the cloud. And then, like the example I was mentioning before, I open my Windows Phone or whatever the case may be and go to OneDrive, open the file. I didn't have PowerPoint installed. It just opened the web version of the PowerPoint viewer, and I was able to show my presentation with animations and everything kept there. Same thing if you go to Android and you're using Google Drive, it will leverage everything on the cloud and allow you to reproduce files, videos, show pictures, and so forth. And this is not new stuff. I mean, we've been using services like this for a while. They've just been, I guess, growing in complexity, and we can do a lot more things, and we can do them a lot faster.
Well, let's talk about developers.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is the fun talk.
So what can developers do these days? What are the implications of cloud computing, having the services here or there? The truth is, rarely you have to have a whole, well, I'm going to get a lot of hate mail for that. I'm sure there were a lot of people who had everything installed in like a one dev machine, like, oh, my machine has everything, it has all of the service and everything. I know actually several people who used to do things like that. And arguably there is nothing wrong with that. But, you know, as you need to move from place to place, maybe your laptop that is really big and chunky and powerful is not necessarily the one you want to be using when you're laying down in bed. Maybe you want your lighter netbook or something else, and you still want to be able to access all of those things. Or if you're coding and you're in one environment versus another, maybe you're more comfortable with a desktop or whatnot. And so most likely you're going to be in an environment where services are going to start getting distributed. And so you have to have quick and fast ways to access that. One of the big key things is the ability to have single sign-on across services. So if you're in an organization and you're hiring all of these different things, well, it's nice that they are all come under single sign-on, so you don't have to be logging into every stinking service that you go to.
Right.
So I think that that's been happening a lot, where in the past might have been a lot more difficult. And it really simplifies the ecosystem, so as you're developing, you don't have to worry about users not having the full access, because now this is managed at the directory service level. So you code for a specific user type, like, oh, I have admins and I have users and maybe elevated users and leaders and managers, and so you can give them a role that you know that is going to have access to certain tiers of your functionality. But you kind of have to worry about, you have to worry about less things. And tools-wise, just like the example we were saying about, you know, showing off a file, sometimes you don't even have to have tools installed in your machine. You can open a web viewer or a web editor of a certain code source code file, and just quickly just give it a view and edit it. This has been running around for a while with like web-based or website hosting services. You don't have to download the file to Dreamweaver and do edits and then push it back. You can actually open an online editor, make that to Word change to your website and push it back. So this is kind of similar. A lot of companies are moving to have the ability for you to not depend just solely on that big, robust
machine
application that runs in that machine. And if you don't install it because you don't have licenses, now the licenses can follow you. As long as it is you, and there's going to be some limitations for, you know, profit reasons, but I think from the developer as a user of services, those are some of the things that I can think about. The easier ability to share, the new protocols that allow you to send things back and forth. But I don't know, what else can you think about?
Well, so when I think about a lot of the times when we talk about applications and developers individually, what I would like to do is, again, reinforce this idea of best practices when you're handling other people's data. What are you doing with that? How is that data being stored? How securely is that? And then when you ask for permissions, I mean, permissions are a big deal for the most part, because you could be leaving your application open to attack. You could be leaving other people's devices and thereby their accounts open to attack. if you write an application and it's distributed. And don't get me wrong, the app stores do what they do, a fairly good job. But for the, it kind of depends. I mean, sometimes you can kind of leave that device open, given the permission. So, for example, OneDrive access. Let's say that, just for conversational sake.
Right.
Some of the apps that have OneDrive access, the ability to read write, for example, if you need that ability to store information or pull it down, it's concerning to me. Especially because we're getting into a place where redundancy is becoming complicated, and where people are going to a more personal approach when using their data. Instead of having maybe, say, 2 or 3 different email addresses, they just have the one now. So like, just say a one Microsoft account, or a one Apple ID, or a one Google account. Google's been doing this for a very long time. So when we think about how those access that information is accessed, and how securely that's not only stored on the device, but that what information we're housing for them on the back end. I think that this is an opportunity for us to talk about that a little bit, and to make it better. And how I would say to do that is I'll put some links into this particular information, but I would say for the most part, when we're using these different kinds of accesses, is research where. And I'm not trying to be a shill for Microsoft or anything, but I got to say they're one of the best when it comes to Azure and the ability and the security stuff, because you can build in so many different OAuths in there and secure those data transmissions back and forth. Alejandro, what do you have to say about all that?
Yeah, and the most precious asset for a developer is their source code, right? And obviously the company that pays them to code for them. So your traditional solution for file sharing might not necessarily be the one that will work for source code, but you're going to have solutions like Git, GitHub, that lets you store stuff, code in the cloud, excuse me, and there's some mechanisms to secure the access. You can generate this secure key that is unique to your computer. Obviously, if your computer gets stolen and somebody with enough knowledge can hack into it, it's just a matter of time. If you can get quicker to it and change passwords or change access in some ways, lockdown, etc., you can do things like that. To the other things you were referring to, I just think that service providers like Microsoft with Azure are obviously taking a lot more effort, or making a lot more efforts in securing information, but also providing you with a lot of flexibility, so that if you're using Microsoft or Amazon, you're not just necessarily tied to the services that they offer you, because people may prefer a different flavor of an operating system or a security service of some sort to encrypt data, or a backend or database service. You may want SQL or MySQL or etc. So they're opening it up, but still keeping it within the confines of ensuring that security, service level agreements, like, hey, if your data goes down, we're making replicated copies of your data in real time. So all of those things that you don't have to worry about are the nice thing about going to these cloud providers. Your choice of public versus private is going to depend, again, on maybe you have some regulations that are imposed to you by the industry that you belong to. Things like Sarbanes-Oxley on financials, I think they prohibit that you host things on a public cloud. They have to be private because they have to be safe and ensure the safety of the people that you provide services for. So there's obviously restrictions that are going to apply. There's common sense. And there's, again, providers versus providers. When you want to go get a website, you have Bluehost and GoDaddy and all of these different choices. Why do you choose one versus the other? Maybe my friend tells me this is better than the other. Maybe what they're showing me that they're using for data security makes me feel safer, or I have previous experiences that make me feel safer. So I think the options are definitely out there, and they're a lot more open. Security, if a man can invent it, another man can probably break it.
That's right.
So that's really, really hard to make something unbreakable. But
I
You
would
know,
just
when
say that I would, like I said, I would just say that we have an opportunity here to make sure that as a developer you can make sure that you put a level of encryption
oh yeah,
built into the code,
oh
um,
yeah,
especially when you're handling somebody's single sign-on. Um,
absolutely.
and whatnot. So I'm going to go ahead and call it there. I think we had a wonderful episode talk about the evolution, the definition, the individual versus the company, and then developers. Did you have any other information that you would like to give out about the cloud before we go ahead and wrap this wonderful episode up in a bow?
I think based on the workshop I attended yesterday, even though it was for Azure and Microsoft, they have really great resources that are they have knowledge that are cloud generic enough that if you want to get into cloud computing, you don't necessarily have to just go with Azure if that's not your case.
Mm-hmm.
But I invite you to look on Microsoft Azure videos. Right now they're doing a series of workshops that are free. They have live, well, not live. They actually they're doing some live virtual sessions, and just keep an eye on what they're doing. They have a lot of white papers. You can search for the same things on IBM and Salesforce. It's a huge thing right now. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact me. Contact JJ. Contact us here. We'll make sure to find someone who can answer your question if we cannot answer your question.
Yes,
So
we will.
our Twitter handles are here on our name tags. So yeah, just let us know
Yep,
what's
just
on your mind.
contact at stltechtalk.com. So that's contact at stltechtalk.com. Go ahead and email us there. You can find Alejandro Ramirez at Alejandro RMZ. Is that all right?
Yep.
Okay,
Alejandro
awesome.
RMZ. That's on my
You can
thing.
find me at JJ Hammond Music on Twitter. I think that's the best place to go, honestly, and hit me up for more information. I want to again thank you, Alejandro, for taking time out of your very busy schedule to come on the show and grace us with your presence. I really appreciate that, and so do our listeners. And thank you to all of our fans. We love and thank you for your support of the show. So from the entire CodeCast crew, consider yourself coded up for tonight. We're out.